On the 20 slides shown below, I present the original photographs of the Second World War from the German archive, which are in my collection. These photos are from my collection department, Wehrmacht on the Eastern and Western Fronts. If you like it, subscribe to my YouTube, like it, so you don't miss the new weekly presentations. If you would like to order 5 inches by 7 inches copies of these photos from the original, you can specify which photos you would like to receive. Laboratory quality. Enjoy your viewing. The 15 cm SIG 33, SF, Auf Panzerkampfwagen I Osf B, sometimes referred to, unofficially, as the Sturmpanzer I Bison, was a German self-propelled gun used during World War II. The invasion of Poland had shown that the towed SIG 33 guns assigned to the infantry gun companies of the motorized infantry regiments had difficulties keeping up with the tanks during combat. The easiest solution was to modify a spare tank chassis to carry it into battle. A SIG 33 was mounted on the chassis of the Panzer I Osf B, complete with carriage and wheels, in place of the turret and superstructure. Plates 13 mm, 0.51 in, thick were used to form a tall, open-topped fighting compartment on the forward part of the hull. This protected little more than the gun and the gunner himself from small arms fire and shell fragments, the loaders being completely exposed. The rearmost section of armor was hinged to ease reloading. There was no room to stow any ammunition, so it had to be carried by a separate vehicle. When mounted, the SIG 33 had a total traverse of 25 degrees and could elevate from -4 degrees to +75 degrees. The gun used an RBLF-36 sight. The chassis was overloaded and breakdowns were frequent. The vehicle's extreme height and lack of onboard ammunition were severe tactical drawbacks. 38 were converted in February 1940 by Alkit. Marder III was the name for a series of World War II German tank destroyers. They mounted either the modified ex-Soviet 76.2 mm F-22 model 1936 divisional field gun, or the German 7.5 cm PaK-40, in an open-topped fighting compartment on top of the chassis of the Czechoslovakian Panzer 38T. They offered little protection to the crew, but added significant firepower compared to contemporary German tanks. They were in production from 1942 to 1944, and served on all fronts until the end of the war, along with the similar Marder II. The German word Marder means Martin in English. Marder III World War II German tank destroyers. In the early stages of Operation Barbarossa, the Wehrmacht felt the need for a more mobile and more powerful anti-tank solution than the existing towed anti-tank guns, such as the 3.7 cm PaK-36, or self-propelled tank destroyers, such as the Panzer I, mounted with the 4.7 cm PaK-T. This need became urgent in 1942, when anti-tank shells fired from said anti-tank guns failed to penetrate the armor of new Soviet tanks, such as the T-34 and KV-1. As an interim solution, it was decided to use captured French vehicles, such as the Lorraine, Marder I, obsolete tanks in surplus, such as the German Panzer II, Marder II, and Czech-supplied Panzer 38T, Marder III, as the base for the production of makeshift tank destroyers. The result was the Marder series, which were armed with either captured Soviet 76.2 mm F-22 model 1936 divisional field guns, or German 7.5 cm PaK-40 anti-tank guns mounted in later versions. Due to weight, space, and time constraints, the Marder series had relatively thin armor when compared with other armored vehicles of the era. The Panzer I was a light tank/tankette produced in Nazi Germany in the 1930s. Its name is short for Panzerkampfwagen I, German for Armored Fighting Vehicle Mark I, abbreviated as PZKPFWI. The tank's official German ordnance inventory designation was SD.Kfz.101. The Panzer I's performance in armored combat was limited by its thin armor and light armament of 2 machine guns, which were never intended for use against armored targets, rather being ideal for infantry suppression, in line with interwar doctrine. As a design intended for training, the Panzer I was less capable than some other contemporary light tank designs, such as the Soviet T-26, although it was still relatively advanced compared to older designs, such as the Renault FT, still in service in several nations, and others. Although lacking in armored combat as a tank, it formed a large part of Germany's mechanized forces and was used in all major campaigns between September 1939 and December 1941, where it still performed much useful service against entrenched infantry and other soft targets, which were unable to respond even against thin armor, and who were highly vulnerable to machine gun fire. The Jagdpanzer 38, SD.Kfz. 138 halves, originally the Leister-Panzerjäger 38T, known mostly post-war as Hetzer, was a German light tank destroyer of the Second World War based on a modified Czechoslovakian Panzer 38T chassis. German armored forces in World War II created a variety of vehicles by mounting anti-tank guns on the chassis of obsolete tanks. These machines performed even better than expected, yet were still vulnerable due to high vehicle profiles and open-top turrets. Allied bombings took a heavy toll on German production facilities, and further increased the need for an easily produced yet effective light tank destroyer to replace vehicles like the Stug 3 and Marder series, Marder 1, 2 and 3. Prototypes of the Jagdpanzer 38 were ready by 1944 and mass production began in April of that year. The Jagdpanzer 38 was covered entirely with sloped armor, and possessed a compact form and low silhouette, giving it much improved defensive ability over other self-propelled guns. Armament consisted of a 7.5 cm pack 39 liters/48 gun and a remote-controlled MG-34. It featured a wide body to accommodate the 4-man crew, as well as strengthened lower hull with enlarged wheels, guide rollers and tracks. Jagdpanzer 38's first entered service in July 1944, and would eventually be assigned to a number of units, including infantry, Panzerjäger and Volksgrenadier divisions. BMM and Skoda continually modified and improved the Jagdpanzer 38 during production of the more than 2,800 vehicles built. Owing to the ease of production and high operating rates, the Jagdpanzer 38 came to serve as Germany's main tank destroyer in the latter period of the war, making an important contribution on both the eastern and western fronts. World War II Panzerstreifen patches. Panzerstreifen, gold and silver on panzer black fabric. The patch was instituted on March 9, 1942, in silver, and on December 18, 1943, in gold. A silver stripe was awarded to a soldier or officer who knocked out an enemy tank exclusively with the help of an anti-tank grenade or a Faustpatrone. An award was given for each destroyed tank. A gold patch was given for 5 destroyed tanks. Max Schaefer was a Standartenführer, colonel, in the Waffen-SS, during World War II who was awarded the Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross with oak leaves, German language, Ritterkreuz des Eisernen Kreuzes mit Eichenlaub. The Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross and its higher grade oak leaves was awarded to recognize extreme battlefield bravery or successful military leadership. Date of birth: January 17, 1907, Karlsruhe/Baden, Germany. Date of death: May 6, 1987, Baden-Baden/Baden-Württemberg, Germany. SS Sturmbannführer, Major Unit. Kommandeur, SS Panzer Pionier Battalion 5, SS Panzer Grenadier Division Viking, Waffen-SS. February 12, 1943. SS Obersturmbannführer, Lieutenant Colonel Unit. Korpspionierführer, 3 Germ, SS Panzerkorps, Waffen-SS. Schaefer joined the Waffen-SS in 1933, and became the head of the SS training system. In 1934, he was a teacher in the SS sports school at Fürth and later at Reutlingen. Schaefer then commanded a platoon in the 2nd Company, SS Pioneer Battalion during the Polish campaign and the Battle of France. Late in 1940, he was promoted to command the 2nd Company, 5th SS Pioneer Battalion, which from June 1941 was involved in the invasion of Russia, Operation Barbarossa. From October 1941, he was commander of the 5th SS Pioneer Battalion, which at the time was operating in the Don and the Caucasus regions. Schaefer was awarded his Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross, for his command during the defense of the Stalinsky sector and the numerous battles his unit was involved in the period between January 1943 and early February 1943. In May 1943, Schaefer became the commander of all pioneers in the 3rd SS Panzer Corps, serving with distinction at Leningrad and Oranienbaum. 1. He was awarded the oak leaves to the Knight's Cross in January 1945. Schaefer was made a prisoner of war by the advancing British forces on 14 May 1945 and released from captivity on 8 November 1948. The Panther tank, officially Panzerkampfwagen V Panther, abbreviated PZKPFWV, with Ordnance Inventory Designation, SD.Kfz. 171, is a German medium tank of World War II. It was used on the Eastern and Western fronts from mid-1943 to the end of the war in May 1945. On the 27th of February 1944 it was redesignated to just PZKPFW Panther, as Hitler ordered that the Roman numeral V be deleted. Citation needed: in contemporary English language reports it is sometimes referred to as the Mark V. The Panther was intended to counter the Soviet T-34 medium tank and to replace the Panzer III and Panzer IV. Nevertheless, it served alongside the Panzer IV and the heavier Tiger I until the end of the war. It had excellent firepower, protection and mobility, although its reliability was less impressive. The Panther was a compromise. While having essentially the same Maybach V12 petrol, 690 horsepower, engine as the Tiger I, it had better gun penetration, was lighter and faster, and could traverse rough terrain better than the Tiger I. The trade-off was weaker side armor, which made it vulnerable to flanking fire and a weaker high-explosive shell. The Panther proved to be effective in open country and long-range engagements. The Panther was rushed into combat at the Battle of Kursk in the summer of 1943 despite numerous unresolved technical problems, leading to high losses due to mechanical failure. Most design flaws were rectified by late 1943 and early 1944, though the bombing of production plants, increasing shortages of high-quality alloys for critical components, shortage of fuel and training space, and the declining quality of crews all impacted the tank's effectiveness. The Panzerkampfwagen III, commonly known as the Panzer III, was a medium tank developed in the 1930s by Germany, and was used extensively in World War II. The official German ordnance designation was SD.Kfz 141. It was intended to fight other armored fighting vehicles and serve alongside and support the similar Panzer IV, which was originally designed for infantry support. However, as the Germans faced the Soviet T-34 and KV-1, more powerful anti-tank guns were needed, and since the Panzer IV had more development potential with a larger turret ring, it was redesigned to mount the long-barreled 7.5 cm KWK-40 gun. The Panzer III effectively swapped roles with the Panzer IV, as from 1942 the last version of the Panzer III, Panzer IIIN, mounted the 7.5 cm KWK 37 L/24 that was better suited for infantry support. Production of the Panzer III ceased in 1943. Nevertheless, the Panzer III's capable chassis provided hulls for the Sturmgeschütz III assault gun until the end of the war. The T-34 is a Soviet medium tank that was designed and manufactured in Kharkiv, 1940, and served during the Second World War. When introduced, its 76.2 mm, 3-in, tank gun was more powerful than its contemporaries, and its 60-degree sloped armor provided good protection against anti-tank weapons. The Christie suspension was inherited from the design of the American J. Walter Christie's M1928 tank, versions of which were sold turretless to the Red Army. Citation needed. The T-34 had a profound effect on the conflict on the Eastern Front in the Second World War, and had a long-lasting impact on tank design. After the Germans encountered the tank in 1941 during Operation Barbarossa, German General Paul Ludwig Ewald von Kleist called it the finest tank in the world, and Heinz Guderian affirmed the T-34's vast superiority over German tanks. 1011, Alfred Jodl, Chief of Operations Staff of the German Armed Forces, noted in his war diary the surprise at this new and thus unknown wonder armament being unleashed against the German assault divisions, although its armor and armament were surpassed later in the war. The T-34 was the mainstay of the Soviet Red Army armored forces throughout the war. Its general specifications remained nearly unchanged until early 1944, when it received a firepower upgrade with the introduction of the greatly improved T-34-85 variant. Its production method was continuously refined and rationalized to meet the needs of the Eastern Front, making the T-34 quicker and cheaper to produce. The Soviets ultimately built over 80,000 T-34s of all variants, allowing steadily greater numbers to be fielded despite the loss of tens of thousands in combat against the German Wehrmacht. The Tiger I was a German heavy tank of World War II that operated beginning in 1942 in Africa and in the Soviet Union, usually in independent heavy tank battalions. It gave the German army its first armored fighting vehicle that mounted the 8.8 cm KWK-36 gun, derived from the 8.8 cm Flak 36. 1,347 were built between August 1942 and August 1944. 12. After August 1944, production of the Tiger I was phased out in favor of the Tiger II. While the Tiger I has been called an outstanding design for its time, 13, it has also been called over-engineered, 14, using expensive materials and labor-intensive production methods. In the early period, Tiger was prone to certain types of track failures and breakdowns and was in general limited in range by its high fuel consumption. It was expensive to maintain, but generally mechanically reliable. 15. It was difficult to transport and vulnerable to immobilization when mud, ice, and snow froze between its overlapping and interleaved shuttle-loaf work pattern road wheels, often jamming them solid. This was a problem on the Eastern Front in the muddy Rasputitsa season and during periods of extreme cold. The tank was given its nickname Tiger by Ferdinand Porsche, and the Roman numeral was added after the Tiger II entered production. The initial designation was Panzerkampfwagen Ausführung H, literally Armored Combat Vehicle V version H, abbreviated PZKPFW VI ORSV. H, where H denoted Henschel as the designer/manufacturer. It was classified with Ordnance Inventory Designation SD.Kfz. 182. The tank was later redesignated as PZKPF-WWII in March 1943, with Ordnance Inventory Designation SD.Kfz. 181.